I did a brief introduction, guys, like 2 seconds ago. That live didn't work out. I kind of didn't press something correctly. I'm going to be joined today with a friend that I haven't seen for quite a while. He opened up like a biodynamic vineyard in California. And we'll be talking about the wine industry and how to source like the highest quality wine. That's preferably, not grown with like a trillion different biocides and stuff of that sort. Okay, he's messaging me here, so let me try to coordinate. All right, guys, we'll try to get this going. Hello, hello, hello. Hope everyone's having a good weekend, or start of the weekend rather. I'm just waiting for a guest to jump in here, having a little bit of technical difficulties, but hey, I didn't see your name, but welcome. Hope you're having a good one. We'll be talking random topic today, but we'll be talking about. Let me see. We'll be talking about the wine industry. My friend opened up a biodynamic organic vineyard in California, so we'll be talking about how to source like the highest quality wine. Honestly, I don't drink myself, but I know a lot of people are really into the wine culture. So at least it'll help them, see past all the labels and what all these labels mean, and if buying a $300 bottle of wine is really worth it or not. I don't know too much about this industry. So, what is up, Matt? Hey, what up, Matt?
Eugene, my man, great to see you.
I haven't seen you in like 15 years, man.
Dude, I know, it's crazy.
It
Great
felt
to
like almost
reconnect.
like 2 or 3 weeks ago, though. Not too long.
Time flies for sure. Yeah,
We might be on like that goldfish level memory, where it kind of like only has like a 5 minute lifespan and then it quickly recycles. And then you're like, oh, new 5 minutes. Oh, new 5 minutes. Really, it's been like 15 years.
dude, it's nuts, man. I just got a place in Newport Beach recently, so I've moved, or well, I'm splitting my time between Newport and San Ynez, where my wine business is. So I'm
Uh-huh.
reconnecting with a lot of old people, and it blows my mind how many people I haven't seen in 15 years, and it just like feels like a blink of an eye.
Yeah, I was just telling people like doing a quick intro while I was waiting for you that I didn't know anything about the wine industry. But it would be interesting to talk to you about. I was telling him you opened up like a biodynamic and organic vineyard. I don't know if this terminology is correct either because I'm not too familiar with that industry. But I wanted to kind of just chat with you about that and also just catch up in general and just kind of take this conversation wherever it goes. So honestly, I'll let you take over. I always let my guests do like most of the speaking, and then I'll try to sound like innovative and smart on the side and kind of ask you some good questions from time to time.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, so McKinney Family Vineyards is the name of my winery. My name is Matt McKinney. Sounds like a passed down business. However, I started the business. Eugene and I know each other from Eugene being my personal trainer back when I used to play with the U.S. national team for men's volleyball in my mid to late 20s. And at that time, I was playing professionally in Greece, Puerto Rico, and Italy for 4 years. My third season playing pro in Puerto Rico, made a deal with my dad that year that if I won the championship, would he finally let me plant a vineyard on our family property. Luck had it that I ended up winning the championship. In Puerto Rico, volleyball is a big sport, 8,000 people at every game. There's a big parade of like 15 or 20,000 people through San Juan after we won. And that amazing experience culminated in my first little vineyard getting planted on my family's property. And that's how I got sucked into the wine industry.
Yeah. How tough is it to like get all the paperwork sorted or to even get like your foot into the industry, especially in California? I know they probably have like a lot more regulations than most states.
Yeah, getting your licensing to start your own winery definitely is an intensive process, and most people are going through a specific wine lawyer to get all that done because with the ABC, the Alcohol Beverage Control, or the TTB, the Tax and Trade Bureau, which both regulate over the wine industry, there's a lot of regulation involved. So it's not the easiest process in the world by any means, but you hire the right person and it's not too difficult.
Yeah. Well, can you tell me, like in chronological order? I'm just curious, even how you kind of build a wine business from the ground up, and kind of maybe what challenges you ran into over the years, and stuff of that sort.
That is a great question. So, building a winery from the ground up, I would say that I am one of the more qualified people to answer that question. I'd also say there's not too many people out there that could answer that question because this is a very capital intensive industry. So you see a lot of very wealthy people getting into this industry because that's the most difficult barrier to entry. Just in terms of how many people are needed to actually grow grapes, make wine, sell wine, and run the back end of a wine business. So unfortunately, I didn't have the luxury of having too much capital to work with when I began in the industry. However, I did have the fortunate aspect of my family's property to work off of. So my family has a 10-acre property in Santa Ynez, California, which is just north of Santa Barbara. And we had four horses growing up. It was my mom rode horses on the property, and it was just kind of all for fun for my parents just to live in the country. I grew up in Woodland Hills just outside of Los Angeles until I was 10, and then moved to Santa Ynez at 10. And it was like my life was just getting kind of better and better as my dad's money management business had started doing well, and we bought the property in Santa Ynez. And so I was very fortunate to be able to leverage my family's property, but I still started from the very bottom. Like the first vineyard I planted on the property was just a half an acre of Syrah and Viognier. And when I moved back home, I started working as a high-end wine tour driver for 2 years, where I picked people up at the big, nice hotels in Santa Barbara, and then I'd set up private tastings with winemakers and winery owners in wine country. I went back to school for viticulture and enology for 2 years, and then I started working production at different wineries after that and building my own production on the side. I've also made wine at co-op wineries where I share equipment and space with 7 to 10 other winemakers. So I really have grinded from the very bottom up in this industry.
Yeah, I could only see with the wine tours, people like coming around, and this bus comes around, and this like avatar looking character steps out. People don't know, but you're like almost like 7 feet tall, It doesn't look like it on camera, but
Yeah, totally. I'm 6'8" actually,
or
but
6'8", so pretty close.
7 foot's close.
Yeah, you just got to change the lighting around a little bit. It's 7 feet out of nowhere.
Well, I
Yeah,
do duck under doors, because if I got shoes on, then I'm a good 6'9" to 6'9.5". So doors are usually 6'8". So yeah, I
yeah,
definitely have a presence for sure. So people, when they show up for wine tours, you're right, they're definitely not expecting someone that looks like me to host them.
yeah. Well, are there any for like for me? I don't even drink alcohol at all or any wine at all. But if I go into a grocery store, like how could I even know the difference between like what's the real difference between this like $5 bottle of wine or this like $1,000 bottle of wine or stuff of that sort. Maybe we can touch a little bit on all the labels. I'm not familiar with any of the labeling in that industry either. I'm pretty sure that would be helpful for quite a few people.
Yeah, definitely. So, first of all, we farm organic on our property, and a lot of the other vineyards in town that we buy fruit and make wine from are either organic or biodynamic. We have a decent amount of sustainably farmed vineyards that we work with as well. Sustainable means that they're adding like small amounts of herbicides, pesticides, and fungicides, but there's a lot of regulation based upon like how much of that they're allowed to use. So it's much better than conventional farming from a health perspective. And um, in terms of labeling of wine and the consumer being aware of what they're buying from a health standpoint, this is where things get pretty convoluted, and it's unfortunate in the wine industry because we are not legally allowed to say anything about organically farmed grapes or
Mm.
even biodynamically farmed grapes if our winemaking process is not that also. we cannot label that on the bottle. So unfortunately, the thing with wine and high-end wine is that if you want to have a microbial stable wine that ages well over time in bottle, you have to make sure that there are no microorganisms living in that wine. And the way that we do that is by adding sulfites in the winemaking process. However, if you want to be USDA organic certified, you cannot add those sulfites around the time of bottling, which is, well, when the grapes first come in and you're turning the grapes into wine, and also when you're bottling. So the two most important times that you would want to be adding sulfites, you can't do that if you want the USDA organic certification. Now, the important thing to understand is that with USDA organic wines, because they don't use sulfites, which is basically just a compound that is killing off microorganisms. It's volatile, by the way, so it does burn off. It's not necessarily like just in the wine. So a lot of people have like a misconception based upon their headaches being associated, or any problem that they get with wine being associated with sulfites. Oftentimes it could be a whole bunch of other things that are causing their problems. It could be the herbicides, pesticides, fungicides made with cheap wine. It could be even like arsenic gets added at times to cheap wine before it's bottled to kill off microorganisms. So the point that I'm making is that with very high-end wine, everyone uses a certain amount of small sulfur, potassium metabisulfite is what it's called, to stabilize their wine so it has longevity in bottle. And the important thing to understand is that when you buy USDA organic wines, that wine generally isn't going to last very long, because basically it has microbes in the wine, spoilage microorganisms that are going to slowly turn that wine into vinegar. And that's what we prevent against in high-end winemaking.
Oh, I see. Okay. Oh,
Mhm.
interesting. So it's like um okay. Yeah, I don't drink any wine, so this is all new to me. I don't even remember honestly seeing like I haven't been to the wine section for a long time, but I don't even remember seeing like a USDA organic certified bottle of wine last time I was in the grocery store. Is that like something new that people are kind of getting into?
Yeah, it's definitely newer. It's like over the last 10 years, it's become bigger, but at the same time, it's probably only 10% of the market that's actually doing it, because it is kind of like gimmicky in a sense where like you're marketing this idea of, yes, organically grown grapes, but also organically made wine. And because it's organically made wine, oftentimes the quality level is not as high, in all honesty, because there are
Yeah,
certain microbes that you do not want in your wine if you're making high-end wine.
got it. I see. Does Demeter certify vineyards? I remember they're not very popular in the US. They're more popular like in Western Europe. But I remember there are some kind of operations that are certified by Demeter. I don't know if you're familiar with that certification body.
I am, yeah. So Demeter does work with vineyards as well. I'd say maybe 5% of the vineyards in Santa Barbara County are Demeter certified. Obviously, anytime you're talking about biodynamic farming, what that is organic farming, but they take it a step further and they're creating homeopathic remedies basically for the vineyard. So they're doing things like fermenting manures from their livestock, adding that back into the soils. They say it helps with root development and microbial growth in the soils. So it would basically create like a stronger immune system for the plants. They're also following lunar cycles of the moon. And, biodynamic farming can get a little wacky as well. It's oftentimes called voodoo vintnering. They'll do things as strange as like a deer bladder with a bunch of different like flowers added to the deer bladder. They'll hang it by a tree for 6 months. They'll turn it into a liquid solution. They spray it onto the leaves of the vines. They say it helps with like photosynthesis. And it can be pretty esoteric, to say the least. So I don't know too many people that are willing to put in the time and effort that it actually takes to get Demeter certified. I know a couple vineyards, but there's not many. You got to be like really dedicated to your farming to want to put in that much extra work.
Does a lot of wine come from overseas?
Um, yeah, I mean, the import market on wine is definitely big, but I'd say California wine has created such a name for itself ever since the Judgment of Paris tasting in 1976 that I would say that most of the United States, 50% of their wine, in most restaurants, grocery stores, wine bars is probably from California.
Got it. Well, what's the big difference between, like, for example, like an industrial operation versus kind of like something that you're doing, like a more organic?
Yeah, so when the consumer thinks about wine and health associated with wine, price point indicates a lot there. So when you start dipping below $30 a bottle in the wine market, you are talking about mass production wine. You're talking about big industrial farming where they're using herbicides, pesticides, fungicides. They're using a lot of tractors with different machinery attached to it to do the work that for centuries has always been done by committed people working in the vineyards themselves. And if you want really high-end wine where you're not getting headaches and you're not getting problems from it, really the price range is $50 to $100 is like that's how much it costs to have the people necessary to hand prune, hand pick, and make sure that you have really high quality product that you're working with to turn into a very good wine.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell my dad that $10 bottle of wine he's bought may not be that great.
Sadly, that's the case. Wine is a luxury product at the end of the day, and it's very sad, but the reality of the situation is that you have to cut a lot of corners in farming to produce cheap wine.
Yeah. A lot of people too kind of like overlook it because they may not know that even like any biocide is a complete formulation, isn't even tested for safety. In America or even Western Europe, because a lot of times people are like, well, in Western Europe, they have such high standards. But I'm like, dude, they don't even test complete formulations of like any of these chemicals that are they're spraying like directly on your food, like in Western Europe or in the US. And
Yeah.
what they do is kind of like is just test the active ingredient in isolation as on its own. That's like the equivalent of like saying like a bullet isn't dangerous. Well, yeah, it's not just used as a bullet. You don't throw it at anyone. It's used with like a rifle. And it's the same exact thing. Like none of these biocides um, are used just as an active ingredient. In fact, like glyphosate, I'm pretty sure you're familiar. It's like a really weak herbicide when all the inactive ingredients aren't there. And that's how it's tested. But then when you put them into a complete formulation with all these other ingredients, it becomes a lot more dangerous and a lot more persistent in the environment. You can kind of just have like a small mist of this stuff and it gets rid of all the weeds without even barely even touching them. So a lot of times people are like, well, it's cheaper. Everything is tested for safety and it's fine. And they don't know these little details in terms of like what even goes on to even approve a lot of these chemicals. And I think it's like a really serious issue. Um, of course, like healthcare or just the health of the US in general is a disaster. And there are a lot of many variables that go into it. But like cancer is very, very serious these days. Like 50% of Americans develop cancer in their lifetime and half die from it. But yet, when you talk to the average person, they're like, "Oh, I'm not going to get it." You know what I mean? And yeah,
Yeah, I know multiple people personally who have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is like directly linked to Roundup pesticide. And when you live in these rural areas where a lot of farming takes place, you hear about these things more often. So yeah, it definitely is a big issue. The American American agriculture, I think, is taking a turn for the better. And when I talk to vineyard managers in the wine industry in particular, and they talk about the regulations that have been put in place about, especially with the different herbicides that are out there, which the herbicides are really like the most dangerous stuff for health, it seems. It seems like the regulation's getting bigger, and then the consumer is becoming, it is wanting the higher quality without the chemicals. And so the change is taking place, but albeit slowly.
Yeah, and a good example is like a lot of times I'm like, well, like if you have this apple here and you spray some like organic biocide on it, like copper or like water and soap, and you have this apple here and you're spraying like Roundup on it, like which one are you going to eat? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
everyone's like, oh, I'm going to eat, I'm going to eat the one that got soap and some water sprayed on it,
Yeah.
But when in the store, they kind of don't see it like past the labels, they just kind of look at that price point. And I think sourcing high quality food, even wine, it's like so important because um, everything about you, including your mind, is ironically made out of food. So if you're sourcing, like sick animals and plants grown with a bunch of chemicals, you can't kind of like expect to be healthy yourself, obviously.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's a lot of new research on the microbiome in the stomach, and when you look into that and the fact that, we have all these microorganisms that live within our own body, those microorganisms would be susceptible to being killed off by an herbicide, a pesticide, fungicide type deal, quite easily. So if you're ingesting a lot of that type of stuff, it makes sense that your microbiome is going to get thrown off, and you're going to have health problems for sure. So you look at the amount of like autoimmune issues that people are suffering from in the United States, and the fact that the your immune system is so correlated with the microbiome in your gut. I mean, it makes sense that there's a correlation.
Yeah, and a lot of times people are like, well, it's like such a small amount. You even hear a lot of like MDs online or PhDs or RDs online saying like, oh, don't worry about all these chemicals because they're like so small. And they're unknowingly going off of a toxicology model that was created in the 1800s by a guy from Salzburg. He's kind of like a goofy character. He's actually really smart, but he created the original model of toxicology. And of course, technology has improved since the 1800s, but just don't think people's understanding of toxicology has improved too much. Because back then it was like you hear this often. They always say like dosage makes the poison. The higher the dosage, the more poison. But a lot of the newer chemicals, from my research, about like 700 different complete formulations that are at least used in the US alone, have like a non-monotonic dose response. So as the dose gets smaller, it ironically gets more dangerous for the consumer. And like no one even bothers. Well, there are people talking about it. It's just not like as mainstream.
Yeah, that's interesting. I can't speak to it to any great extent, but the one thing that I will add to what you're saying is that, even organic sprays like can be kind of questionable as well. And I think that that's like an important thing to throw in there as well. Like some organic sprays are like neurotoxins, even for humans. And so, like organic sprays, like you'll have someone with a respirator like spraying. It's called like hyganic, for instance, which is from like the chrysanthemum flower, I want to say, and it's like a neurotoxin that will kill bugs like white, these like little white flies that we'll get in the vineyards. And so it's interesting when you see even organic and the precautions needed by a human being to spray them. So it's not so cut and dry. Like organic is like 100% safe, and these industrial chemicals with high doses or low doses, like how bad are they for the human body? This is all still like science is trying to uncover all this as we're going through this science experiment in our agriculture system.
Well, one of the listeners, David, is asking, is there any agency overseeing the wine industry like the USDA for foods?
Well, yes. I mean, it depends. It's only if you're organic or biodynamic certified. So the USDA is there for the actual like end product, but the organic certification company. God, I'm drawing a blank on it right now because even on our property, we didn't go through the process of getting organically certified just because we're only on a 10-acre property. And what we had heard is that if you have neighbors too close to you and you can't prove that they're farming organic as well, because like the spray could be coming into your vineyard theoretically, your chances of actually getting that certification are very low. So basically, the only wineries that you know for sure would be the ones that have an organic certification or a biodynamic certification, and they're usually much bigger vineyards that are able to actually get those certifications.
Yeah, but that's good. Rewinding back a little bit, that's good that you brought up the various levels of integrity with organic farming too, because it's not like just so black and white. Like here's like industrial farming, here's organic farming. Uh, like you can be like an organic farmer and just have like 10 acres of nothing but carrots, you know, it's like not organic farming. Or even in the US, they allow like hydroponics to be certified as organic. And organic started with just like optimizing the soil, soil health, and now they're just like able to be certified organic, just growing stuff in like some matrix container and stuff of that sort. So yeah, that is an important note. There's like various levels of integrity with organic too.
Yeah, and there's also regenerative farming, which is picking up a lot of steam right now as well. And regenerative farming is not really something that's in large part being used in wine because we have these uh, vineyards that are constantly growing. There's no like short life cycle like there is with a lot of vegetable and fruit produce where you can change your crops out and then move livestock through your property as a way of adding nutrients back into the soil naturally. That's basically regenerative farming. But that certification is growing, and it's a great concept that I like, especially when it comes to like beef, so cattle farming and cattle ranching, and the integrity of like keeping soils healthy. Um, so that's another one to be aware of.
Are there any kind of like super goofy labels that uh, are just thrown on some bottles that like mean nothing, but people think it's like more high quality? Like when you see like all natural chicken, like all natural chicken at the grocery store, it's like a meaningless label, but people are like, oh, you know, it's real chicken. I'm like, hopefully it is, you know, not that it's created in some like 3D printing Lego shop or something, you know.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So, natural wine is basically what you're referring to in terms of like a catchy marketing label for wine. So, natural wine movement just kind of started over the last 10 years. It picked up a lot of steam over the last 5 years. And basically, they are also like organic or biodynamic farming. They are trying to market how healthy the wine is. um, the problem with the natural wine scene is that it kind of creates a, a market for lazy winemaking, is kind of the best way that I would put it. Uh, Now, it's great if you have organic grapes. Like, I love the integrity of organic farming and doing things small scale and high quality. However, in the winemaking process, like if you're not going through the proper steps, like with what we call racking, which is basically like cleaning your wine, clarifying your wine, and putting the highest quality in bottle as possible. You'll oftentimes see like unfiltered wines that are part of the natural wine movement, and they're also not getting potassium metabisulfite to make it microbial stable when it gets bottled. So oftentimes you'll have some pretty weird flavor profiles going on in natural wine, and it kind of becomes like a gimmicky space within the wine world where people are selling often cheaper wines that I don't think had great winemaking involved in the process. And they're basically saying that this is just like the natural kind of old school way of doing it. And there's something to be said about that. That's cool. It's worth trying, but it's definitely not the highest quality wine generally.
They're like, you want the real deal? Here you go. Just just crush like three grapes together, got some juice out of it, and there's your wine, you know?
Yeah, if you want to know what wine tastes like back in the Roman days, natural
That's it
wine,
then.
go for it.
Do they do are there any like genetically modified grapes? Is that a thing in in the wine industry or grape industry?
Yeah, there are genetically modified grapes, but it's pretty rare that they're actually used because oftentimes they have some weird name associated with them. And in wine, the consumer already, there's a barrier to entry based upon whether they can pronounce oftentimes the French or Italian names of the grape species themselves. And so the marketing ability of creating some new, what we call clone, which is, a hybrid plant, or, could be a GMO. It could have happened naturally as well because vines will pollinate naturally. They go through a flowering process and two different vines will pollinate and create a new seed that creates a new plant. So that does happen naturally. That's actually how Cabernet Sauvignon was created, is that Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc cross-pollinated and had a baby, and it was Cabernet Sauvignon.
Okay, you sound like very French there. You've been working on your accent, you know? That's very good. Well, how do you a lot of people also don't know that there's like a gargantuous variety of any crop. Like most people just think there's like two or three different types of carrots, but really there's like 500 plus different types of carrots. How do you choose, or how did you go about choosing which type of grape species you're actually going to use for your particular operation?
Yeah, for me personally, in choosing what grapevines we were going to grow and make wine from, it really had more to do with my own personal taste preference than anything else. So I, did a lot of my own market research around town. I drank all the best wines from all the best wineries, and I had a good idea in my head of which varietals I wanted to make wine from, or which varietals were best suited for my property. I live in the San Ynez Valley, just north of Santa Barbara, and I am on the further eastern side of the valley, which is close to Happy Canyon. We're like dead center in what's called the Los Olivos American viticulture area, and it's one of the hotter parts of the San Ynez Valley. So we can successfully grow both Rhone varietals and Bordeaux varietals, which are the hotter climate varietals that have thicker skins that are used to a lot of heat from those particular regions in France originally. So you definitely have to plant what will work best with your soil type and your microclimate. And then outside of that, it's what is your personal taste preference in terms of what you decide to grow on your property.
Got it. Are there any other logos that a person should be conscious of when shopping for wine? I know we covered like all natural and the USDA logo and Demeter as well, and also are there like non-GMO certified? Do you see that certification on any wine bottles?
I haven't seen that yet, and there's a lot of debate in the wine world on whether ingredients should get added to the back of wine bottles. So I have started seeing a little bit more of ingredients getting added by certain producers who just want to be like integrity driven in terms of what they're putting in their wine. So, like for instance, tartaric acid is a pretty common additive that gets added to wine. It's pretty natural to add into wine. Like if you picked your grapes too late off the vine and all of the natural acidity converted to sugar, you'd have to add tartaric acid to balance the wine out and make sure that it's like got a crisp kind of zing to it. Basically, when you salivate after you drink a glass of wine, that is the acidity talking to you. So now you'll see some producers like adding tartaric acid on there. There's a lot of weird stuff that can take place in the wine making process with cheap wine. There's this stuff called isinglass, which is actually from fish bladder, and winemakers will actually use this to do a fining process where they drop out tannin. So if there's too much like skin tannin from the grapes still in the wine, and it has like a bitter kind of astringent flavor or taste that like dries your mouth out, they'll add isinglass to kind of round out the texture of the wine. So this is where, a lot of this stuff is not regulated, and you don't have to add this on the label of wine at all. So that's where it can be kind of the Wild West out there in terms of what is actually in your bottle if you're not buying like higher end wine from a producer that personally, and the integrity of that producer. So what I always say is, like, when it comes to wine and you want to be sure that you're getting high quality stuff that doesn't have a bunch of weird additives in it, like, go directly to the source, go to smaller wineries that are integrity driven, that are making the highest quality stuff. And that's your easiest way of eliminating this from taking place. The grocery store really is a crapshoot because you're getting into the mass production volumes at these huge industrial wineries where oftentimes they're adding a lot of this type of stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of the same with supplements. It's really tough to find good quality supplements at a grocery store, even like Whole Foods, for example. Just because the processing is so expensive, if you kind of add another middleman into the equation, like a grocery store, it just makes it unprofitable to sell the supplements. So oftentimes, the only place you can get it is just from these kind of smaller, but actually like more elite, like higher quality brands that may not have the best marketing team, and that's like oftentimes the only thing that gets people to kind of look away. But it's that was going to be my next question. I'm like, oh, isn't it really tough to find that high quality wine at a grocery store, like even Whole Foods? I presume it is then, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can find them for sure. Like when I go into a Whole Foods, like I will see higher quality, smaller wineries that are in there. Maybe, they don't have four or five of their wines. They might just have one bottle of like one of their wines, but the smaller producers generally are in there as well. And the best thing to do is just to go and actually talk to the wine steward at these stores. And generally, they're pretty knowledgeable, and they're people that are going up to wine country and tasting wine themselves. And if you ask the right questions, like, I'm looking for like a really like passionate, like smaller winery that's making really high end wine that's kind of like up and coming, organic, biodynamic farming. That's kind of what their style is, or their integrity based upon their farming. Like if you just say like these types of things, the wine steward can lead you in the right direction for sure.
This is kind of like super random. But do you know, is Moldova like really respected, like great producer for wines?
Honestly, I'm not
I don't
super
know.
familiar. And where is Moldova?
It's like kind of like next to Ukraine. It's like a um
Oh, okay, the country of Moldova. I wasn't
yeah.
sure. Okay.
I don't think they're like a country on paper. They're just kind of like self-proclaimed country, and they just kind of do their own thing, whether they're on paper or not.
Yeah, Eastern Europe in general is interesting because, I mean, and then as you dip into moving south into the Middle East to some extent, I mean, Georgia is like the oldest remnants of wine in the history of the world. Georgia and Armenia, and that's kind of like the birthplace of wine. But then, yeah, Eastern Europe. I mean, obviously, the vines and winemaking transferred into there before it ever hit Rome, really. So there's a lot of history to wine in those regions. But oftentimes, as I was saying before, in terms of the consumer ever buying a wine with a grape that they can't even pronounce the name, that's why you'll probably never see a Moldova wine anywhere in a store.
Got it.
Yeah.
Uh, what's the toughest part of running a winery or just a wine business? What's the toughest part of the business in general?
So the toughest part of running a wine business, this is a loaded question because the wine industry is a difficult industry to say the least. Um, I mean, for me personally, in my own personal experience, the toughest part of this industry was growing my business to where I was no longer investing all of my money back into product, but I could invest it into people instead. And it's taken me 10 years basically to hire 5 full-time employees to where I could finally start living a normal life and taking 2 days off a week. Because in the early stages of starting a business, I mean, you're in grind mode. And in the wine industry, you make all your money on Saturdays and Sundays. So, and then Monday through Friday, you got vineyard work, you got winemaking work, you got the whole back end of your business and compliance and communications with your wine club and logistics and shipping, and you got your accounting. I mean, it was a lot. And then, yeah, just the wine industry is no joke, is basically how I'm going to sum that up. This is a low profit margin, um, capital intensive industry where you got to have a lot of passion if you're going to make it in this industry.
Is there a lot of consolidation in the wine industry too? Like there's just basically like two or three big players that are like 90% of the market, and then everyone else is just the rest of the 10%.
So the consolidation that you're speaking of in the wine industry is mostly based around the distribution side of the industry, and that is the big volume producing side of the industry, which from a volume standpoint, that probably equates to 50% of the industry as a whole is larger scale producers. So let's say 100,000 cases per year and more. When you get into that game, you got the Youngs, you got Gallo, you got Kendall Jackson, you got these just massive companies that there's really like six of them that just kind of own everything from the volume game in the wine industry. But the other 50% of the industry is all your mom and pop producers that are small and passion driven, and they're in it for the love of it, and they're trying to make the best wine they possibly can at a smaller scale. So but for most people who live in cities, what they are going to experience is that consolidation of the industry within the distribution world, because those are the guys that are actually selling into all the restaurants, wine bars, grocery stores all over the country. So oftentimes you're not getting the small mom and pop producers in most parts of the United States. You are getting the mass production producers who, let's say Gallo, for instance, I think they own like 500 wineries, something like that. It's a crazy number. So yeah, the consolidation is massive at that highest level.
Is there like more profit like selling to like restaurants or like where do you feel like most of the profits are in the wine industry?
Um, it's definitely not selling to restaurants. If you're going to sell to restaurants, wine bars, grocery stores, it's more of like a marketing tactic for wineries than anything else. Like they're hoping that that is going to get their name out there and it's going to bring more people to their winery. But if you're actually going to make money in this industry, you have to have a strong direct to consumer business model, and you have to have a good experience on your property with high-end wine where you're signing people up to a wine club membership. That's how you have a really successful business on a smaller scale. That's kind of like the foundation of a strong pyramid in the wine industry. But if you want to take it to the next level, and if you can produce the volume necessary, then distribution is the next step, and selling to the marketplace is your next tactic, but your profit margins are going to be a lot lower.
Yeah, it's funny how you mentioned like, oh, the wine industry isn't for beginners. It's like very difficult industry. It's like pretty much everyone's I've like coached pretty much everyone from every industry at this point, and like doctors are always like, oh, don't get into the medical field, Eugene. It's like not the same. It's like too difficult now. Then lawyers are like, ah, never become a lawyer. It's like too difficult. Then like supplement store owners are like, ah, don't get into the supplement industry. I'm like, dude, what's there left, man? I just got to go escape into the wilderness. The only place where I can find like peace at this point, you know?
Man, it's so true. I mean, but the thing is, you talk to anybody in any industry and they've been in it for 10 plus years, and everyone's a bit jaded from how hard they had to grind to get where they got, and that's just the reality of the situation. And, as long as you're young and you're passionate and you're willing to work, you can carve your niche in any industry, and that will always be the case.
Well, how have you held yourself together? Because a lot of times, business does consume a person's health, and they just kind of let themselves go mentally and physically, and they never rebound back. Definitely not looking like you, and stuff of that sort. So, are there any kind of or any ups and downs you've had, and you kind of learned from over the years?
Yeah, thank you for asking about the ups and downs. Uh, Health wise from my business experience because they've been rather profound for me. As I was telling you before, I worked like 7 days a week for probably the first like 6 to 7 years of my business. Was not uncommon that I'd go like 2 months at a time before I'd take a couple days off. And, I had this mentality that, like, I'm this high level athlete. I played basketball and volleyball at UCLA. I played 4 years of pro indoor volleyball overseas and with the US national team. And I was like, I'm strong. I can push through, I can grind through whatever. And that actually led to burnout for me in the form of alcohol poisoning about 7 years ago, where I drank myself to death over like a 2 day period. I finally had just reached my breaking point where I was like, I kind of hate my life. Like all I do is work. This is my whole life. And I think at that like 6 year point into my business, I realized that I really had another 6 years to go to really get my business to where it needed to be to start living like a balanced life. And that thought was so depressing to me that I'm just like, I don't care if I live or I die. And I just like slow drank myself to death over a 2 day period. Had to go to the hospital, get hooked up to an IV, have my heart rate stabilized. Like thought I was going to die of a heart attack basically after like 2 straight days of like, throwing up and hyperventilating and just being so dehydrated. So I've actually had a really hard recovery that I've had to take on from that. My nervous system was fried for years. I couldn't drink coffee for like 3 years. I couldn't drink alcohol for, I mean, I still can't drink much alcohol. It was about 3 years before I could start drinking like a glass of wine again. So I learned the hard way about burnout, unfortunately. And these days, I am working on advising as many entrepreneurs as I can on how to avoid burnout.
Yeah, it's kind of tough, especially in the business circles, because uh, you always think like, oh, if I just relax a little bit or I don't work as hard, like the competition will outpace me. And it could be true in some cases, and stuff of that sort. And then also just the limited amount of time you have, on Earth to get like a big project going. And a big project is usually, like you mentioned, like 10 years before you really hit like a good peak. And then you kind of ride it for a while, et cetera, et cetera. But what are some things that have maybe you can share, like
Yeah,
exactly like what's worked for you over the years?
Yeah, let me just touch on a piece of advice. One of the most important pieces of advice that I could give a young entrepreneur starting out and building their business is that location is one of the most important decisions that you can make on where you decide to take on that 10-year challenge of building your business, because there might be some businesses that you can build in 5 years and start creating like a legitimate income and a good life from. But honestly, there's not a lot. I'd say that 80% of most industries out there get ready for a decade of your life to be dedicated to your work and creating mastery in your field. And if you're not living where you truly want to be for that 10-year period, you're going to burn out and you're not going to make it to the promised land. So I'd say like get that in line first before you plan on enduring the sacrifice necessary to have a truly successful business.
Got it. And hold on, Matt. I think your video is kind of a little frozen. Are you able to see me moving?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, that's probably still filming. Kind of frozen on my end, but I could hear you. Um, wh- well, what? Oh, there we go. Perfect. Well, can you tell me more about like the organization you started in terms of helping entrepreneurs kind of approach their goals in a more sustainable and like health conscious way?
Yeah, so I'm actually in the process of starting my second business at this point. I have finally fully built, hired, delegated, systematized my wine business, and I bought a place in Newport Beach over the last year and a half. And I feel like I've kind of accomplished everything that I set out to accomplish in the wine industry. And my other big personal passion in life is personal growth. I've been a massive personal growth reader for the last 20 years, and it's just what I enjoy to do in my own time. I love psychology, and I love working with other passionate people that are trying to become the best versions of themselves. So self mastery in general. So this is like a mindset, self mastery, men's coaching business that I'm currently building. My personal Instagram is Matt McKinney Coach. So if you want to look me up there, I got the start of what's coming with that new business, and then my wine business being McKinney Family Vineyards.
Okay. Well, do you want to talk about any of like your methods or perspectives? I don't know if you've kind of laid out like the whole system yet or would like to share it.
Yeah, so when it comes to the men's mindset coaching business, for me personally, what has created so much difference in my life was when I began intense psychotherapy after my alcohol poisoning experience. And where I began with that was personality tests. And I think it's rather interesting how many people in this world are flying blind in this world, where you actually don't understand who you are as a person. And if you don't understand who you are as a person, how are you ever going to get to the end goal that you think you envision for yourself? So, starting from a place of who are you? What's your personality type? For me, on the Enneagram, I'm the three, which is the achiever, performer personality type. And it answered a lot of my questions based upon the cycles of depression and grandiosity that I had been living through, which are actually very common for my personality type. I didn't realize that the validation of other people around me was such a big motivating factor for me. So I judged my performance in life based upon my accomplishments, and whether I accomplished my goals or not would dictate whether I was content with who I was as a person, which is a form of conditional love. And if you're operating from a place of conditional love, you're never going to be truly happy, because that parasite that's within your head that's judging you, basing your entire self-worth upon what you accomplish, that is all the thoughts and opinions of other people and satisfying the parasitic ego part of your mind that honestly doesn't serve you. It's going to drive you into the ground and make you go crazy. So that's kind of the starting point. And then from there, you can articulate like, where are we going? What are the goals that we're setting, and what is the plan of action to get there? So this is all what I have worked so hard on in my life, and creating a balanced life where now I've now worked on cultivating peace and joy and a sense of personal self-worth that is not tied to my achievements any longer. And my life's gotten a lot better over the past few years. So anyway, I'm just looking to share, what I've learned on my journey with other people and help them get to the top of their own personal mountain.
Yeah, and for the listeners, the Enneagram, it's been around for like I think thousands of years at this point. I think it started in like Eastern Europe by this guy named Gudurov or Godarov. I forgot his exact name. And then it kind of went through a few different phases, but I think it's like nine personality types. And everyone is like all nine, if I'm not mistaken. But you're just kind of like heavily leaning on one and using the other character traits to kind of support that one type, which is a super cool test if you've never taken it before. And you're totally right about I've coached many people before, like they're super success. A lot of them are super successful too. And you sometimes ask them about like simple things like your core values, like what's important to you, and they're already like 45, like 50, and like, oh, I never even thought of that. You know what I mean? They're just kind of like just kind of mirroring and kind of surviving like pretty well, at least in the external world, but never really knowing like what's important to them. There's like a really good book that I like called The Crowd by Gustavo Le Bon, and he mentions just how easily it is to manipulate like mass crowds because there's like a third consciousness that forms when you get two or more people together, and that consciousness is like the more people you get, the more emotionally amplified it gets, and it's easier to kind of like manipulate people that are uh, kind of more going off of emotions than anything else. But he mentions uh, like when you ask a person like why do you believe like ABC, and they'll typically say something, oh, because XYZ, and you simply just sit there quietly and then wait till they finish, and then you just simply ask them again like, oh, why is that, like why do you believe that? And like 90% of people will go blank at that point, but even the small percentages that say like, oh, because this and this, and then just sit quietly and then just ask them one more time like, oh, why is that? And their response would be like, well, that's just how it is, you know? And they kind of created like a whole belief system, a whole belief structure that basically molds their entire psychology, but never bothered to even ask like where this belief structure even came from. It's just kind of like mirroring people around them. But just unfortunately, the people around them are like very mentally and physically unwell most of the time. Not that they're bad people, they're just kind of like given the wrong information in terms of how to approach the external world sustainably. And it may gain you some like financial success or a promotion or some titles or whatever, but at the expense of just being like very mentally and physically unwell.
Yeah, 100%. Carl Jung has one of my favorite quotes where he says, until you can make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And it's really one of the most profound quotes in all of psychology because most people are functioning from an unconscious state in their life in general. And until you can become fully self-actualized in terms of your intellect and your emotional intelligence in terms of understanding who you are and not being able to be thrown off by the world at large and stay on your own path, you're not actually living your own life. You're actually living for the thoughts and opinions of other people in some sort of like societal narrative, basically.
Yeah, and I feel unfortunately, one of the challenging parts is like you have to have a lot of quiet time to have that internal reflection. And with just the general myopic state that people live in these days, which is made worse by like social media, because any free time they have is spent like just looking at goofballs online, basically, instead of having that time to reflect, like how's my life going, et cetera, et cetera. What's your take on that?
Man, it's a scary thing, the distraction of everyone's lives these days. We live in the information age and we are so flooded with distraction all around us. And it is really hindering the mental health of so many people worldwide, the inability to sit with themselves and their own thoughts and their own feelings.
Yeah, and
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning into the podcast. I'm curious, have you ever been confused by the labels in the grocery store? In Yevgeny's book, he demystifies the difference between caged, cage-free, free-range, and pasture-raised meats. He also covers how to avoid GMOs, source high-quality water, fish, supplements, and other related topics. It's a beautifully illustrated, non-technical read that comes with a comprehensive video series and other extended learning materials. Jump on Amazon and check out the book titled Anti-Factory Farm Shopping Guide by Evgeny Trufkin. Now let's dive back into the podcast.
I would just kind of urge people, it's the weekend, just take 2 seconds, go to your settings on your phone and see how many hours you spent this week on different social media platforms. And I guarantee you for pretty much 98% of people, it's not going to be less than 20 hours. So it's basically like scrolling around on social media is kind of like a part-time job at this point, And I do get a lot of people saying like, oh, I don't have time to work out, or don't have. I even show them how to make meals with like 5 minutes. It takes 5 minutes if we can make meals for the whole day. And of course, you don't have time. You're spending 20 hours a week looking at some goofball on freaking Instagram or something, you know what I mean? Then of course you're not going to have time for yourself. The time is there. It's moreover like a core values issue, I find. Um, this is a little bit like with marketing. I hate to kind of externalize blame, but there's some of it here for sure, in the sense that like a lot of Americans I see have been fooled into believing what's not important is most important, you know, and what is most important is like least important, you know what I mean? And I know a lot of people say like, oh yeah, being mentally and physically healthy or spending time with your family for sure, that's important. But then you look at their actions, which speak louder than words. It's like a distant like 9 millionth place, you know? I'm like, well, if it's so important, why can't even see it in the race anymore, man? You know?
Yeah, and the loneliness epidemic. I think men are experiencing this worse than women currently, but I think this is obviously intensified greatly through our technology, our phones and our TVs, and this endless distraction that people are dealing with. But at the end of the day, like, men in particular have to learn to become social creatures again, where you go out, you're not afraid to talk to people, you're not afraid to say hi to a girl at the gym, even meet other like-minded men, do things like pickleball or tennis or volleyball or whatever it is, and like get out and like socialize with other people, get away from your phone. The connection I think is lacking, human connection, especially after COVID and the social conditioning that we were all forced through during that time period. Everyone has to work that much harder to make up for that, and learn how to create better connection with other people away from technology.
Yeah. What do you feel led to that in terms of people? I know you mentioned COVID a little bit, but I'm pretty sure actually it was happening a lot even before then.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, just technology in general has led us to yeah, distract ourselves is the best way I can really put it. It's just your attention and your focus is going into distraction. And I don't know, there's almost like this feeling of like you're doing something, but you're like not. It's like tricking people's minds into thinking that they're like being productive to scroll on their phone or watch movies or TV or videos. And it's almost like this hypnosis that so much of our country and the world are now living in, that we have to actively like be conscious of and actually fight against, in terms of creating a plan and a schedule for our lives that pulls us away from that technology and interacting with other people that we love and care about, and we can grow as human beings.
Yeah, I forgot the name of the book. It's been a long time, but there's this one author that mentioned electronics or excessive electronic use, kind of the electronic use you described, is just kind of like a form of dissociation. So when people lose the purpose in life, or they just don't really have any like interest in what they're doing, but are stuck in that situation for long periods of time, the central nervous system tries to like dissociate and distract itself with electronics. Because sometimes if you're stressed out, maybe it's nice, you sit on the couch, just numb your brain out or whatever. You don't have to think about anything. Just the only problem is like once you stop doing that, that problem is still there, And then it could compound over time sometimes as well. So a lot of times I feel it's like people may not need more discipline. They just need more like purpose. And once they get like more purpose, that's more aligned, like you mentioned, with their like personality type or their core values. Um, they just naturally don't want to waste their time like doing all this other stuff. It's because it's taken away from their core essence, like of who they are at that point.
Yeah, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head with purpose and the lack of people that have purpose in their life. And I think this is part of why I'm getting into coaching myself, is that a huge part of purpose is that most people give up on purpose and long-term goals just based upon not having someone there to like help them break it into small actionable steps to accomplish the longer term vision that they're looking towards. And we all need support in this world. And actually, one of my old business coaches in the past, he hit me with a profound statement. And he said, Matt, the more successful you become, the more support you're going to need. And that just hit me like a ton of bricks, because for some reason we have this thing, this ego thing where we tell ourselves, I have to push through and endure in life on my own. And that is the absolute opposite of the psychology of true success. The psychology of true success is finding a team and building a team of like-minded individuals and people who have achieved what you want to achieve in life, finding mentors and climbing the ladder with those people.
Yeah, and I think a critical thing for a lot of people, it's humbling. You got to be a humble person to understand this. And I had to seek out a lot of mentors and read a lot of books myself. It's like excruciatingly difficult, I would say almost impossible to solve a problem with the same belief system that led to the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what people try to do without like seeking out a mentor or like some course or something that could kind of saturate whatever they have going on in their belief system. Maybe not all aspects of your belief system are to be questioned, but certain aspects of it for sure are leading to problems, in your life that, like you mentioned, people just try to solve themselves or tough it up. That's just not how it works. You know what I mean? Imagine like where you would be if you never went to school and never had a single teacher or a single parent. Like you'd just be like some caveman that can't even speak like any language. It'd be just like, well, which would I think would be cool to see because you're a true beast then with no programming.
Very rare. Yeah, I think it's a Buckminster Fuller quote that you were trying to get to, where he says that no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness with which created it. And it's the same with our own personal growth in life. And, it's interesting because, yeah, as you said, like we have coaches and teachers our whole life up until we're kicked out into the world and then we're expected to just do it on our own. And this is one of the biggest fallacies that anyone could live their life through, is this idea that they just have to suffer through it and do it on their own. And no, like you should be hiring people who have the information that you need and have accomplished the success that you want to accomplish, and you should still be working and being coached by those people. There is a barrier to entry on that, and it is called your own personal investment, your capital, which is going to be painful to put down to try and level up and get to the next level. But it's what you have to do in life, because at the end of the day, your parents were just the ones paying it before. They were paying for you to go to school. They were paying for your coach in athletics, whatever it was. And now you've just stopped. No, you have to keep investing in yourself throughout your entire life if you really want to achieve your highest goals.
Well, Matt, on that note, I would argue it's not too painful because the money is already being spent. The average American spends around 8 to 16,000 a year on non-essential expenses that literally do like nothing for their life at the end of the day. This is like just eating out, alcohol or subscription services, or um, I'm not even counting travel. Then if they travel too, it's like, okay, who cares? You went to Europe for 2 weeks, now you're back at your miserable job. Like you're still back in the grind. Um, I think it'd just be wise for them to realize like that kind of spending isn't doing much. And if they took that, even on the low end, that 8K a year and just reinvested it in maybe like a business course or a business mentor, or maybe something like your program, um, in the grand scheme of things, it would improve the quality of their life way more than another trip or, going to some restaurant once a week or something of that sort, which, and stuff of that, but,
No, 100%. I mean, if every person out there could invest $8,000 into their life with a coach that they highly respect, who's going to help them get to the next level in their life, they would look back on that 1 year and that 8,000 is the best investment they ever made. I know because I've done this personally. I've spent over $100,000 over the past like 7 years on business coaches and mindset and life coaching. And every time I look back on it, like, why didn't I do that earlier? Because like my life has improved so much since I made that investment in myself.
yeah, same with me. I just feel like a mentor is like helps fast track it. Yes, you might be able to spend the next 10 to 15 years if you're really diligent making all the mistakes to learn and get the wisdom yourself. Or you can just hire this person, they could teach you in like 4 months and you'll save 20 years of a lot of pain,
A lot
oftentimes,
of
dude.
pain.
Yeah, just a lot of pain, man. You
It's
know?
so true. It's crazy how much we suffer unconsciously out there, and it's just kind of like the norm of society. Like other people are out there suffering as well, and the truth is like you just don't have to suffer to that degree. Like instead, suffer for shorter periods of time, learning what you need to learn, and changing your lifestyle with a coach who can help you, and just watch how fast your life starts taking off in a positive direction.
Yeah. Well, one more thing I wanted to cover here, Matt, is I have like a kind of love-hate relationship with like positive psychology. What's your take with positive psychology?
Yeah, that's a great question. Positive psychology, I tend to have a bit of a love-hate relationship with also. And in men's coaching in particular, I think that men need hard truths, in all honesty. Like they need a man that they respect who can call them out on their bullshit. And this coddled culture that has been created, and political correctness and don't offend people and all these things is part of why society is declining. And we have to somehow create a fortitude in younger men and just people in general based upon being able to take constructive criticism and use that to level up. And from what I've seen in men that I've worked with in the past, is that they generally respond really well to um, tough love and like a man that they respect calling them out on their bullshit. And I generally see fast action taking place when they are.
Well, what are some things looking in the past that you kind of, um, as Walensky would say, we can never begin an honest journey until we stop believing the lies we tell ourselves? What in the past, like what were some lies you were telling yourself, and then now in retrospect, you're like, oh man, that's like wasted so many years doing that, you know?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Lies that I told myself in the past. I mean, my biggest subconscious belief that I've had to uncode is that I'm not good enough. And it took me many, many years before I finally got into consistent psychotherapy where I could uncode this and really understand it. I had a narcissist father growing up, and when you have a narcissist parent, they have like a godlike complex where they have to be like the king of their world, and they find passive aggressive ways to like demean you or demoralize you and always put themselves above you. So it's a big control dynamic. And my dad was a very like loving man. He meant well. And it was like the tough love type of mentality that drove me. But unfortunately, it's like from a young age, I realized that I had realized that every accomplishment that I made in life, nothing was ever good enough. And I was never fully complete. And it didn't matter like what I did and accomplished, I still didn't feel a feeling of like self-worth. Because I was always like looking to the thoughts and opinions of other people. So uncovering like our negative subconscious beliefs is one of the most important things that we can do to be conscious of how our mind operates, and then create affirmations based upon our new beliefs that we're putting in place. And that's when we actually start making progress, and we're not so susceptible to falling back into these like negative thought patterns.
Yeah. There's an interesting model I read about a little while back. I think I asked you to do a book club on it like a long time ago when we touched base, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago over a quick phone call. It was like it's a psychologist like Stefan Wolinski, but he kind of trying to bridge the gap between like Western psychology and like non-duality, but make it more like Western mind friendly, so it's not like so like voodoo, you know, and kind of scares people away. But he basically kind of went off of a model like um, you know, when a child is born, like during the first like 8 to 12 months, they have like no personality or even ability to comprehend that they're even different from anything. So they have like no concept of duality. But then, in order to have a chance of survival in the external world, the central nervous system um, creates a personality for it, you know, like the 9 personality types you mentioned in the Enneagram. And it's kind of done this for you. So it's kind of like roll of the dice, which personality type you're going to be in your life, kind of thing. And each personality type, like for the type 3, their greatest fear is that they're worthless, so they'll spend their entire life trying to avoid that great fear of being worthless by trying to prove they are worthy. And it's typically kind of reflective of their environment. So if they're in academics, they'll try to, get like a master's or PhD or become like a well-known professor or researcher. If it's in the military, they'll try to like climb the military ranks, whichever, et cetera, et cetera. But in the sense, what his, I'm just going to kind of briefly kind of summarize it, but what his theory was that with um, the false self, which is kind of the level of the personality that's formed to avoid that greatest fear, it does get you to survive better in the external world for sure. Like it gets you more money, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. But it takes you further and further away from your essential being the further you lean into that false self.
Yeah.
So it will provide you sugar highs, like you make your first 100K a year, you're like, yeah, and then 2 years later you're back to feeling worthless. You're like, no, it's because I need 300K a year. Then you spend like a few years doing that, and then you hit it, and then like, yeah, 300K a year, and then like a year later you feel even more worthless. And then you're
Mhm.
like, what the heck? And then after so many of these cycles, then people start getting into like drugs or alcohol because they kind of start feeling like it's hopeless, you know what I mean? Because this cycle becomes like very obvious that it's never going to be kind of filled. Then where do you go from there? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, you see this problem all the time. I mean, there's so many ultra wealthy people out there that you hear this story over and over again about how like unhappy and unfulfilled they actually are with their life because they keep chasing this idea of what fulfillment actually is. And the truth is that your unconscious beliefs about yourself are really the strongest marker of your personal contentment and happiness in life in general. So once you get to a certain degree, like as you said, like the ego works as a servant to you to a certain point where it's going to drive you and motivate you to be successful and put in the work necessary to get things done in the physical world. But once you get to a certain point and you're living somewhat comfortably, now you have to travel inward and you got to do the soul work to understand who you truly are and break free of like the ego persona, which is nothing more than an idea of who you think you are, but it's not truly who you are. So the inner work and doing that inner work and uncovering your soul and who you truly are is the next big step towards self mastery and fulfillment and feeling like you have conscious purpose in life.
Yeah. I always find the best, the question I like the most is like, when people say like, I think it's more appropriate to say the mind instead of my mind. But like, when you say, oh, I changed the mind, then you could ask people like, oh, who is that? That's changing the mind. Then you can't be your mind. And since all your thoughts about you come from your mind and you're not the mind, like who's that? You know what I mean? That's observing the contents of the mind. It's always
Yeah,
interesting.
in a tactic in psychotherapy is oftentimes what they'll have you do is name the voice in your head. So for me personally, AJ is who got named, and AJ stand for asshole judge. I was always demeaning myself, demoralizing myself. Nothing was ever good enough. This like constant judgment in my head. And so finally, once I was able to name the voice in my head, it became a separate entity from myself. And that's a very important part of like breaking free into a new reality where you're no longer subject to the unconscious thoughts within your head.
Yeah. I don't know how big you are into like studying volition, but I always found it very interesting that you always see the thought after the fact. And then you build a story upon it, but never before, because a lot of people, like I feel, they think they have volition over their thoughts too.
Mhm.
I don't know if you ever kind of like observe that at all, or you kind of like move your hand, but then you only notice the movement of hand after it's already moved.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't gone that deep, so you could teach me on that one on another day.
Yeah, I don't know if there's much to teach or much you're going to get out of it. You know, it just kind of goes in circles. Like I don't think anyone has like a good answer for it. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, at the end of the day, our subconscious beliefs are extremely powerful, and yeah, like having someone to guide you, whether it's a psychotherapist or a life coach of some sort, is invaluable towards like really pinpointing what your negative subconscious beliefs are, and truly understanding like how to tap into soul and your true self.
Cool. Well, I'll include your resources in the notes section for anyone that wants to check out your site or your Instagram, they could just kind of click on there for convenience. Um, but Matt, are there any other topics you would like to cover? I can go on like for a million of these topics. I just don't know how much you want to stay on this live for.
No, I got to get going as well, but I'm
Okay.
just going to give you a shout out and tell you that you are the best personal trainer that I've ever worked with. Like you absolutely embody everything that you preach. And I was really, really impressed with your anti-factory farming book that you created recently, and your newest book that you're coming out on American pathology. I already pre-ordered. So I'm looking forward to reading that as well, and just know that I have a ton of respect and admiration for you.
Cool. And it's good to see you and good to stay in touch all these years too. So,
Likewise.
okay.
All right,
All
bro.
right,
See you
guys.
again
Have a good
soon.
weekend. Take care.
Later.
Thanks for tuning into the podcast. If you've ever had trouble losing weight, or you've lost weight, but still didn't have the ideal body or health you're aiming for, please feel free to reach out anytime and book an assessment. Eugene will work with you to cover your goals in detail, see what's holding you back, and go from there. In the meantime, feel free to check out the countless testimonials on Eugene's website in the link below. In the testimonial section, you'll notice everyone has various backgrounds, are of all different ages, and all have had different challenges in their life, but they all have one thing in common: they were all able to find their health and achieve their ideal body. You're also welcome to add yourself to the Facebook group in the link below. There you'll have access to the live videos that Eugene does weekly on Sundays, and other helpful content. Thank you again for tuning in.